Earlier in the week, I picked Deontay Wilder to win that fight against Zhilei Zhang, and admittedly, I regretted it immediately. What happened was probably what I feared, especially after the weigh-in, 70-pound difference. Wilder's been outweighed plenty of times in his career before, many times actually, not by 70 pounds. This was on record the heaviest opponent he's fought since 2010. Zhilei Zhang knocked him out in a way that was frightening. And a lot of people are taking this opportunity to dance on Deontay Wilder's grave. I don't feel like that's necessary right now. I know a lot of people didn't like him. He was very polarizing, but I want to talk a little bit about him. Wilder started boxing. He was like 20 years old. He had never boxed before. Spina bifida. We know the whole story. His daughter's dealing with a disease, and he wanted to take up boxing while he was just working to help provide for his daughter. He becomes an Olympic bronze medalist, which is insane. 2008, turns pro, and then just goes on this hellacious knockout streak. What a lot of people will do now, honestly, a bunch of people did this in a moment, is negate Wilder's resume, which admittedly, no, I wouldn't say it's the best heavyweight resume of the last 25 years. I wouldn't say that. But I do think that there are some things worth remembering. One is that he hadn't fought any like big fights at the time in 2016 when he was going to fight Alexander Povetkin. Before that was like Arthur Spilka and Eric Molina, guys like that. Bermane Stiverne, who was actually good at the time, but nobody will call Bermane Stiverne an all-timer. I still think that's a nice win. And the rematch was obviously very memorable for a lot of reasons. I was at that fight covering it. But in 2016, he was going to fight Alexander Povetkin in May. He had already gone to Europe to wrap up training and was going to fly to Russia. The fight gets canceled because Alexander Povetkin tests positive for a banned substance, one that is said to increase your stamina, which in a heavyweight division, very, very important. And Alexander Povetkin, because of that, doesn't fight Deontay Wilder. The WBC cancels the fight. There's a dispute about who actually canceled it, who stepped out. It was a WBC. Look it up. The misconception about the Povetkin fight is that Wilder, it was his fault that Alexander Povetkin test positive and that they didn't go through with the fight. There's suspension, whatever the case may be. But that was a big fight in the second year of Wilder's title run that could have happened that didn't because his opponent tested positive. And that was probably going to be his first real test at the world-class level. There's still some debate about who would have won that fight. I think Wilder probably would have gotten outboxed for however many rounds until he finally knocked out Alexander Povetkin, because that's pretty much how he was beating a lot of guys back then. And Alexander Povetkin was, somebody who was a little older, but at the time he was still seen as one of the better heavyweights in the world, like absolutely one of the better heavyweights in the world. That's why it was such a big fight. And the fact that Deontay Wilder was going to defend the title in Europe, in Russia, as a matter of fact, because Alexander Povetkin's team won a purse bid, like that's something that should be highlighted as well. So then you move forward, and obviously you get to the Luis Ortiz fights. Luis Ortiz is the best guy that Deontay Wilder's beaten. And I think that Luis Ortiz, in his day, in his peak, he was one of the best heavyweights in boxing. He was one of the more feared heavyweights in the division. You could say, oh, he's not like an all-time great. Sure, yes, this we've known for a while. This hasn't been an all-time great run of heavyweight boxing. But Luis Ortiz, I felt like, was a very quality win. Both of them were. Wilder, again, losing some rounds, but we know what he was looking for. And in his peak, he would find it. He would find the right hand and eventually stop his opponent. Then you have the Tyson Fury trilogy. Those fights were great. The first one in particular, a lot of people thought that Tyson Fury should have edged that one out. Deontay Wilder probably had a knockout in round 12 against most other people, but Tyson Fury was able to rise up like The Undertaker and then outbox him for the rest of that round. It was just immensely entertaining trilogy that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder really got the best out of each other in a lot of ways. Deontay Wilder, even when he looked overmatched, was still able to floor somebody who at the time was a consensus best heavyweight in the world. Like, that needs to be commended as well. And we're doing this thing where we're trying to discount and dance on the grave of somebody who was the best American heavyweight in the world for a while, brought back heavyweight boxing, brought excitement into the heavyweight division. Anthony Joshua was coming up. It hadn't really become Anthony Joshua yet, but obviously there was a lot of excitement about him even at the time. But Deontay Wilder brought a lot of excitement. It was highlight reel knockouts. It was personality. It was polarization. And I think that we should highlight that and overall his story, because it's pretty unprecedented that somebody like that who starts boxing late has some of the most fearsome power that we've seen in the division in quite some time. For me, as somebody who was born in 1994, most exciting heavyweight of my lifetime, also the biggest puncher of my lifetime. I just hope that people take time to appreciate what he brought to the sport. Wasn't perfect, but it was at a time where the sport needed some juice. Up until the last Tyson Fury fight, he was must see TV at his peak. One of the best knockout artists that we've had in the sport. And it's unfortunate because we're never going to get Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, or at least we shouldn't now. I think Wilder should retire. I thought that the loser of the fight between him and Zhang should retire, and he should emphatically retire after seeing that knockout. Like, I would not like to see anybody get knocked out over and over again in that way. He's clearly shot, not the same dude. Shouldn't have fired Mark Breland. Ultimately, I think Wilder should be celebrated if this is the end. And hopefully it is, because of the things he accomplished, because of what he did for the heavyweight division. And he was a champion. Say what you want, but he was a champion for a while, had many successful title defenses. And while the resume could appear lukewarm to some, I think it's a little bit better than people are giving credit for. And it could have been better had we seen the Alexander Povetkin fight and had we get the Anthony Joshua fight at the time that we should have. So respect to Deontay Wilder. Respect to Zhilei Zhang also. Hell of a knockout. Hopefully he gets a big fight next because he's 41 and he needs to go right now. Daniel Dubois on that same card with a great finish over Philip Hrgovic. I bet on that one. Glad to see Daniel Dubois pull it through. Hopefully he gets a fight with Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium. That'd be a lot of fun. Deontay Wilder, thanks for the memories and my interactions with him. He's one of the nicer guys that I've probably encountered in terms of the fighters in boxing, and the interviews I've had with him in the past. There's been a couple of them. So that's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more coming very soon. Thank you for watching.